The maid's child entered the Comatose Millionaire's room, and the impossible happened. Melissa Thompson trembled as she gripped the mop tightly, trying to focus on the job she so desperately needed. She had gotten the cleaning position at Mercy General Hospital just a week ago and couldn't afford to lose this opportunity. That's when her daughter Emma slipped from her sweaty hands and ran down the hall toward room 307. The 7-year-old girl, wearing her only clean red dress, stopped beside the bed where a man had lain unconscious for more than 3 months. "Emma, come here right now," whispered Melissa desperately, looking around afraid someone might see them. But the girl didn't move. Instead, she began softly singing a lullaby Melissa had never taught her. "Sleep, my child, for Grandma is here. The stars will protect you, till morning is near." The fingers of the man in bed twitched for the first time in months. Melissa felt her heart race. She quickly pulled Emma away, but the movement had already been noticed by the head nurse passing through the hallway at that moment. "What's going on here?" Sister Margaret appeared in the doorway with the stern look that haunted all hospital staff. "I'm sorry, sister. My daughter just got lost for a second," Melissa tried to explain, holding Emma close. "You know very well children aren't allowed in patient rooms, especially not in Mr. Richard Harrison's room." Melissa lowered her head, knowing her dismissal was imminent. But something in the nurse's expression changed when she looked back at the patient. "Wait a moment." Sister Margaret approached the bed and observed carefully. "Dr. Michael needs to see this." Minutes later, Dr. Michael Foster entered the room in his impeccable white coat, accompanied by Jonathan Harrison, the 42-year-old son who had been managing his father's business since the accident. "What exactly happened here?" Jonathan asked irritably, his brown eyes fixed on Melissa. "Your daughter was singing to my father," Dr. Michael explained, checking the monitors, "and from what Sister Margaret told me, there was movement in his right hand." Jonathan looked at Emma with suspicion. "Who taught you that song?" he asked the girl directly. Emma looked at her mother, then back at Jonathan. "Nobody taught me. I already knew it. The man in the bed used to sing it to me when I was little." Melissa paled. "Emma, you've never seen this man before in your life," she said quickly. "Yes, I have, Mommy, at Grandma Grace's house before she went away." The silence in the room was deafening. Jonathan approached Melissa with a questioning look. "Who is Grandma Grace?" I don't know what she's talking about," Melissa stammered. Dr. Michael intervened diplomatically. "Mr. Jonathan, I know this is unusual, but there's been a documented neurological response. If I may suggest, perhaps we could investigate this scientifically before making any hasty decisions." Jonathan hesitated. 3 months earlier, his father had suffered a stroke that left him in a vegetative state. The doctors hadn't given much hope for recovery. "Very well, doctor, but I want answers about who this woman is and how her daughter knows my father." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Melissa tried to keep Emma away from the 3rd floor, but the girl always found a way to escape and appear in room 307. Every time she sang, Richard Harrison showed signs of brain activity that puzzled the entire medical team. Jonathan hired a private investigator to discover the truth about Melissa Thompson. In just 2 days, the report reached his hands. "Interesting," he murmured, reading the papers in the hospital waiting room. "Melissa worked for 5 years at Little Dreams Daycare in the Hopeville neighborhood, the same daycare that received regular donations from my father's company. Even more intriguing was discovering that Melissa's mother, named Grace Thompson, had been registered as an employee of the Harrison family between 1975 and 1985. That night, Jonathan confronted Melissa while she was cleaning the hallway. "Your mother was my father's nanny, wasn't she?" Melissa stopped scrubbing the floor and stared at him. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Grace Thompson worked for my family when my father was a child. Your daughter knows a song that only my grandmother used to sing to him." Tears began to stream down Melissa's face. "Please, Mr. Jonathan, I need this job. I have a daughter to raise on my own." "I'm not threatening your job. I'm trying to understand why my father only responds to your daughter." Melissa wiped her tears with her uniform sleeve. My mother did work for your family. She cared for your father as if he were her own son. When he grew up and no longer needed a nanny, your family promised they would always help ours if we needed it. And did they help? Melissa's bitter laugh echoed through the empty hallway. My mother waited for that help until the day she passed. She worked 16 hours a day cleaning houses to support me. When Emma was born, I was so desperate that I went to your father personally. Jonathan stepped closer, interested. What happened? He wouldn't even see me. The security guards threw me out of the company, said he didn't know any Grace Thompson. The weight of the revelation fell on Jonathan like a stone. He vaguely remembered his grandmother talking about a special nanny, but he had never thought about it as an adult. Why didn't you say anything when you started working here? Would you have hired a maid your family had rejected before? I falsified my documents to get this job. I had no other choice. Jonathan ran his hand through his hair, processing the information. And your daughter. How does she know so much about my father? My mother told stories about the boy she raised, sang the same songs. Emma absorbed everything like a sponge. When my mother got sick, Emma spent hours listening to those stories. Where is your mother now? Melissa lowered her eyes. She passed 2 years ago. Cancer. We didn't have money for proper treatment. Guilt began to weigh on Jonathan's chest. His family had indeed made a promise and not kept it. The next day, Dr. Michael Foster proposed a controlled experiment. Emma would be allowed to visit Richard Harrison for 15 minutes daily, always under medical supervision, to verify if there was a pattern in the neurological reactions. During the first official session, Emma not only sang but talked to the unconscious man. Grandma Grace said you were very mischievous when you were little, said the girl, holding Richard's inert hand, that you would climb the backyard tree even when she asked you not to. The monitors registered spikes of activity. Jonathan, watching from the doorway, felt a chill recognizing the mentioned tree. It still existed in the family's backyard. She also said you were very sad when she left, that you cried in secret because big boys couldn't cry in front of others. Jonathan swallowed hard. He vaguely remembered that day. He was only 5 years old, but the nanny's departure had marked his childhood. Emma continued talking, revealing intimate details that only someone very close to the family could know. The location of Richard's favorite toy, the food he liked most, the way he was afraid of thunder. Dr. Michael Foster wrote everything down, fascinated with the patient's brain response. "It's impossible," he murmured to Jonathan. "It's as if he's hearing and processing every word." After the session, Emma approached Jonathan in the hallway. "The man in the bed is trying to wake up, but he's scared." "Scared of what?" "Of having done something bad to Grandma Grace. He wants to say sorry, but he can't speak." Jonathan knelt down to the girl's level. "How do you know that?" "He squeezed my hand 3 times when I talked about Grandma. 3 squeezes mean, 'Forgive me.' Grandma taught me." That night, Jonathan searched through his father's personal files for clues. At the bottom of a locked drawer, he found a box of old letters. The first ones were childish notes from Richard to Grandma Grace, full of drawings and childlike declarations of love. The later ones, however, were letters written over the years but never sent. "Dear Grace," read one, dated 1995. "I know I promised to take care of you and your family, but my father forbade any contact. He said dismissed employees were no longer our responsibility. I cherish your memory and hope you are well." Another letter from 2010. "I heard you have a daughter. I wanted so much to help, but I don't know how to find you without causing trouble. My wife wouldn't understand my connection to you." The last letter was from just 2 years ago. "Grace, I found out you are sick. I tried to locate your daughter through the daycare, but she doesn't work there anymore. Please forgive me for not being the man you deserved." Jonathan trembled reading those words. His father had tried to keep his promise, but always found obstacles or excuses. The next morning, he found Melissa before her shift started. "I need to show you something," he said, handing her the letters. Melissa read each one with tears in her eyes. "My mother died believing she had been forgotten," she whispered. "If only she had known." "Your mother did know," a frail voice interrupted the conversation. They both turned. Sister Margaret was approaching with a gentle expression Jonathan had never seen before. "Forgive me for overhearing, but I recognized the name Grace Thompson. She came here a few times in recent years, always asking about Richard Harrison. I advised her to contact the family directly, but she said she couldn't." "Why?" Melissa asked. "Because she knew he was married and had a family. She didn't want to cause trouble. But she left a message with me, in case it was ever needed." Sister Margaret left and returned minutes later with a yellowed envelope. "She asked me to give this to Richard if he ever needed spiritual peace." Jonathan opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an old photo and a short letter. The photo showed Richard at 7 years old, hugging Grace in the family garden. On the back was written, "My dear boy, 1978. The letter was simple. "Richie, if you're reading this, it's because you're going through a hard time. I want you to know you were the greatest joy of my life. Taking care of you taught me what true love is. Don't carry guilt for promises you couldn't keep. Life took us on different paths, but my heart always kept a place for you. Forgive yourself, as I have always forgiven everything. Grace." Jonathan couldn't hold back his tears. Beside him, Melissa wept silently. "Let's show this to him," Jonathan decided. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now, continuing. In room 307, Emma was already in her daily session when Jonathan and Melissa arrived with the letters. Dr. Michael Foster was watching the monitors closely, while the girl hummed softly. "Emma," Jonathan called gently, "can you tell him we found Grandma Grace's letters?" The girl nodded and leaned over Richard. "They found Grandma's letters. She said she forgives you for everything." The heart monitor immediately sped up. Dr. Michael Foster approached, checking the vital signs. "Read the letter to him," the doctor suggested. Jonathan began reading Grace's letter with a choked voice. With each word, Richard's reactions intensified. When he reached the part about forgiveness, a tear ran down the unconscious man's face. "Daddy is crying," Emma observed. "He's very relieved." "Daddy?" Jonathan found it odd. "Not my real daddy, but Grandma Grace said he was like a son to her, so he's like a borrowed daddy for me." Jonathan smiled at Emma's childish logic, but his expression changed when he noticed the monitors showed something extraordinary. "Doctor, look at this." Dr. Michael called a colleague's attention. "Brain activity at levels we haven't seen in months." During the following week, Emma's visits became the most anticipated event at the hospital. Nurses and doctors discreetly gathered to observe Richard's reactions. Jonathan began spending more time at the hospital, talking with Melissa about the past of both families. He discovered that Grace had kept all the mementos from the years she worked for the Harrisons. She had a box with photos, toys your father gave her, even the first drawing he made for her, Melissa told him. Emma grew up hearing stories about every object. "Where is that box now?" "At home. Emma won't let anyone touch it. Says she's saving it for when the borrowed daddy wakes up." Jonathan felt a tightness in his chest. "May I see it?" That afternoon, Jonathan visited Melissa's humble home in the Hopeville neighborhood. The place was simple but clean and organized. Emma greeted him enthusiastically, eager to show Grandma's treasure. The shoebox was carefully preserved. Inside, Jonathan found decades of memories, photos of Richard at various ages, childhood drawings, a lock of his baby hair, letters he had written to Grace when he learned to write. What impressed him most was a notebook where Grace had recorded all of Richard's particulars, his fears, dreams, food preferences, even the songs that soothed him when he was sick. Grandma said that one day this would be important, Emma explained, that Richie would need to remember who he really was. Jonathan leafed through the notebook with reverence. There, documented, was a childhood he himself didn't fully remember. Grace had been more than a nanny. She had been a second mother to his father. At the end of the notebook there was a final entry dated just 3 years ago. Emma has the same sensitivity I had with Richie. She can perceive things others don't see. If he ever needs help finding his way back, she will know how to guide him. Jonathan looked at the girl in astonishment. Emma, do you feel something special when you're near my father? The girl thought for a moment. I feel like he's lost in the dark and needs a light to come back. Grandma Grace taught me to be that light. How? By singing the songs he liked, talking about the good things he lived, showing that he is loved. Grandma said love is the strongest light there is. Jonathan had to sit down. The emotional depth of that 7-year-old child constantly surprised him. Do you want to help my father come back? Of course. Grandma Grace asked me to take care of him if he ever got lost. That night, Jonathan made a decision that would change everything. He sought out Dr. Michael in his office. Doctor, I want to try something different. I want to bring elements from my father's childhood into the room, objects that might awaken deeper memories. Dr. Michael seemed interested. What kind of objects? His nanny saved practically everything. Photos, toys, even clothes from when he was a child. I also have the songs she used to sing, written down in her notebook. It's an unconventional approach, but considering the results we've already seen, it's worth trying. The next day, room 307 was transformed. Jonathan brought childhood photos of Richard, the teddy bear he loved when he was 5 years old, and even a small sound system to play the lullabies. Emma was delighted with the changes. Now he'll remember who he is, she said confidently. The first reaction came when Emma showed the teddy bear to Richard. Remember Teddy? Grandma Grace told me you cried so much when you thought you'd lost him. Richard's fingers moved, trying to reach for the toy. Dr. Michael Foster documented everything, impressed with the motor response. It's extraordinary, he murmured. It's as if we're accessing deep layers of memory. During the session, Emma began telling stories that Grace had narrated to her. Grandma said you were very brave when you had to get a shot. You didn't cry even a little bit, even though you were scared. And that you always shared your toys with the other children who came to visit. And that you promised her you'd always be a good person, even when you grew up and became important. With each story, Richard showed more intense reactions. His hands clenched, as if trying to hold on to the memories. Jonathan watched everything with a heavy heart. He was discovering aspects of his father he had never known. By the end of the week, something had changed. During one of Emma's sessions, Richard made a sound, a low moan, almost imperceptible, but the first sound he'd produced in months. He's trying to speak, Emma announced excitedly. He wants to say something important. Dr. Michael called specialists to evaluate the situation. Tests showed neurological activity in areas responsible for speech and recognition. Mr. Jonathan, Dr. Michael explained, your father is showing signs of emerging consciousness. I can't promise a full recovery, but there are significant improvements. What does that mean? It means we should continue with what we're doing. The emotional connection your daughter, he looked at Emma, has established with him is creating neurological pathways that medication couldn't. Jonathan gently corrected him. She's not my daughter, doctor, but she's becoming part of our family. Melissa, who had been watching everything silently, felt her heart race at those words. That night, Jonathan sought out Melissa after her shift. I need to talk to you about Emma's future. Melissa felt a chill in her stomach, fearing the worst. My family owes yours a debt, Jonathan continued. I want to offer Emma a scholarship to one of the best schools in the city, and a better job for you in our company's administration. Melissa was speechless. Why? You don't need to do this out of pity. It's not pity, it's justice. And it's also gratitude. Emma is bringing my father back to us. And if he doesn't get better, will you feel obligated to take care of us forever? Jonathan looked at her seriously. Melissa, what Emma has done for my family is priceless. Regardless of what happens to my father, you're part of our story now. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. The following weeks brought slow but consistent progress. Richard began responding to simple questions with head movements. His eyes, which had remained closed before, began to open for short periods. Emma adapted her visits to his new reactions. When Richard opened his eyes, she would position herself where he could see her and continue telling stories from his childhood. Grandma Grace used to say your eyes were just like your mother's, Emma recounted during one session. Brown like chocolate, she'd say. Richard fixed his gaze on the girl for the first time. Dr. Michael Foster documented the moment as a significant milestone in his recovery. He's really seeing me now, Emma observed. Before he would look but didn't really see. During this phase, Jonathan discovered more details about the relationship between his father and Grace. Speaking with former family employees, he learned that Richard had been deeply affected when she left. Your father was 15, shared Mrs. Jenkins, who had been a cook at the Harrison house. He cried for days. Your grandmother said he'd lost his second mother. Why did she leave? Your grandfather thought Richard was becoming too dependent on her, said a 15-year-old boy didn't need a nanny, but Richard never got over her departure. Jonathan then understood why his father had felt so guilty. The promise made to Grace hadn't been broken through neglect, but through pain. Richard had distanced himself because the separation had been too traumatic. He decided to share this discovery with Emma during one of their visits. Emma want to know why Richard was sad when Grandma Grace left? The girl nodded while holding Richard's hand. Because he loved her very much, but his grandpa thought he was too big for a nanny. Richard missed her, but couldn't say anything because people might think he was a crybaby. Richard's eyes filled with tears as he listened. But Grandma Grace was never angry with him, Emma continued. She understood that sometimes people do things that hurt without meaning to. Richard squeezed the girl's hand tightly. It was the most deliberate movement he had made so far. He's saying sorry, Emma interpreted. To Grandma Grace and to my mom too. Jonathan was moved. His father was indeed communicating through Emma. Tell him Grandma Grace has already forgiven everything, and that my mum forgives him too. Melissa, who was watching from the doorway, approached the bed. Mr. Harrison, she said softly, my mother always spoke of you fondly. She understood you had different lives. She never held any grudges. Richard turned his eyes toward Melissa and moved his lips, trying to speak. Grace, he managed to whisper with difficulty. Grace, Melissa completed, holding his other hand. She's at peace, and very proud of the man you became. Tears streamed down Richard's face. It was the first time he had cried consciously since the accident. Dr. Michael Foster watched everything with both scientific fascination and emotional awe. I've never seen neurological recovery driven by such deep emotional connections, he commented to Jonathan. Emma isn't just awakening your father's consciousness. She's healing old psychological wounds. Will he recover completely? It's too early to say, but the progress is remarkable. The human brain has surprising regenerative capacity when properly stimulated. From that day on, Richard began trying to speak more. Isolated words, short phrases, always related to the memories Emma brought forth. Mom, he tried to say during one session. Mommy, Emma asked. You want to talk about your mommy? Richard nodded. Grandma Grace said your mommy was very beautiful and smelled nice, that she read stories to you before bed. Jonathan was surprised. His grandmother had passed away when he was very young, but Richard remembered her through Grace's stories. The sessions became a journey through Richard's childhood memories. Emma had memorized so much about his life that she could recall specific memories that aided his recovery. Do you remember the day it rained so hard and you made cookies in the kitchen? Asked Emma. Richard smiled. It was the first genuine smile in months. Kais, he managed to say. Grandma Grace used to say you ate so much raw dough that you got a stomachache. Richard laughed, a faint but joyful sound. Jonathan observed these interactions with mixed feelings. He was happy about his father's recovery, but also sad to discover aspects of his childhood he had never known. Dad, he said during one of their visits, I'm sorry I didn't know these stories before. Richard turned his eyes to his son, and with great effort whispered, No. You know. Now I know, Jonathan repeated, holding his father's hand. Emma, always attentive, sensed the emotion in the room. Grandma Grace used to say, family isn't just who you're born with. It's who you love with too, she declared, with the wisdom of someone who had grown up hearing stories of love and forgiveness. 2 weeks later, Dr. Michael authorized Richard to try sitting up in bed with support. The movement was slow and difficult, but he managed to stay seated for a few minutes. Emma was overjoyed. "Now you're almost really awake," she celebrated. Richard smiled at her and, with considerable effort, whispered, "My special girl." Melissa was moved to hear those words. That was exactly how Grace used to refer to Emma. During this recovery phase, Jonathan took practical steps to fulfill the promises his father hadn't been able to keep. He enrolled Emma in the best private school in town and offered Melissa a position in the family business's administration. "I don't want you to accept out of gratitude," Jonathan clarified. "I want you to accept because you deserve these opportunities." Melissa hesitated. "What if it doesn't work out? What if I can't keep up with such a job?" "You will. You raised Emma alone, worked multiple jobs at once, never gave up. You have all the qualifications that matter." Emma, always practical, asked, "If I go to a new school, can I still visit my borrowed dad?" "Of course you can," Jonathan assured. "In fact, I think he'll need your visits for a long time yet." Richard, who was listening to the conversation, nodded in agreement. As the days passed, Richard's recovery accelerated. He could sit up for longer periods, articulated words more clearly, and showed growing interest in the world around him. Emma adapted her stories to include plans for the future. "When you're better, I'll show you where I live. Grandma Grace planted a mango tree in the backyard. She said you loved mangoes when you were little." Richard smiled and whispered, "Sweet man, go." "That's right. Sweet like you liked them." Jonathan realized that Emma's visits weren't just therapeutic for his father, but also for the girl. She had found a father figure her life had always lacked. One day, Dr. Michael brought excellent news. "Mr. Jonathan, the tests show extraordinary neurological regeneration. Your father is responding beyond all medical expectations. Will he recover completely?" "I believe so. He might not be exactly as he was before, but he'll certainly have a very good quality of life." Jonathan shared the news with Melissa and Emma. The girl was overjoyed. "I knew it. Grandma Grace said true love always heals." That afternoon, Richard managed to say a complete sentence for the first time. "Emma, my special girl, thank you." The girl threw herself into his arms, carefully so as not to hurt him. "I love you, borrowed dad. I love you too, borrowed daughter." Jonathan watched that scene with an overflowing heart. His family had expanded in a way he never imagined possible. In the following months, Richard continued to improve. He could walk with support, speak more complex sentences, and showed interest in gradually resuming some activities. Emma adapted perfectly to her new school, but maintained her daily visits to the hospital. Jonathan had become a present father figure in her life, and Melissa had discovered administrative talents she never knew she possessed. "You know what amazes me the most?" Dr. Michael Foster commented to Jonathan during a checkup. "It wasn't just your father who healed. The whole family found a way to heal old wounds," Jonathan agreed. The arrival of Emma and Melissa had brought not only Richard's recovery, but also a deeper understanding of love, forgiveness, and second chances. On a special afternoon, Richard managed to visit Melissa and Emma's house. He sat under the mango tree planted by Grace and ate the sweet fruit he had loved so much in his childhood. "It's exactly as I remembered," he said, his speech already much clearer. Emma snuggled up next to him. "Grandma Grace used to say that some things never change, even when everything around us changes." Richard looked at the girl who had been instrumental in his recovery. "Your grandmother was right. True love never changes." Jonathan watched the scene, knowing this was just the beginning of a new chapter for all of them. The broken promises of the past had been mended, but more importantly, new promises were being made. End of story. And you, what did you think of this story of love, forgiveness, and second chances? Were you able to feel the emotion of each discovery, along with the characters? Tell us in the comments Which part touched you the most? And if you believe in the transformative power of true love, your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories that will warm your heart.